Welcome to another video sponsored by MEDANS, the Middle Eastern Dance Association of New Zealand. This time, Madam President asked if I could do something on Art Deco, because the 2018 MEDANS Festival is in Napier. Art Deco, yes, not in 5 minutes. So I'm going to restrict myself instead to the popularity of all things Egyptian in the West in the early 20th century. Hi, I'm Kashmir, and the West has had a fascination with Egypt for many years. There's the pyramids, the Sphinx, the Nile, Cleopatra, crocodiles. I'm going to limit myself to a few things that came up from about 1900 to 1940. Ballet Russes, Cleopatra wannabes, King Tutankhamen, and a touch of Art Deco. Let's start with the Ballet Russes. As the name suggests, they were a ballet company of Russian ballet dancers who performed throughout the West, but not in Russia itself. The clue is Russian Revolution. So they were based in Paris. They were immensely influential throughout European society, and by that I actually include Australia and New Zealand. So this was culture, and they toured a lot. You may have never heard of the Ballet Russes, but you may have heard of two of their famous dancers, Anna Pavlova, and here in New Zealand we created the most beautiful dessert in her memory, light, fluffy, cream on top, and also Vaslav Ninsky. Between 1909 and 1912, the Ballet Russes performed 6 Oriental ballets. So they drew their inspiration from all of the East, which is, as I said earlier, anything east of Paris. Their costuming was really spectacular, and here's a couple of them. I've already mentioned Salome, who wasn't Egyptian, but here is Cleopatra. The Ballet Russes was influential on Western fashion for decades, and it also actually changed the perception of the East. This was the equivalent of your blockbuster film. This is how people saw the world was through the Ballet Russes. And it is arguable that the Ballet Russes costuming actually had more influence on the creation of the modern bra and bout, which was built, by the way, on top of an existing vest, chemise and skirt, than anything from Hollywood, because it is the Ballet Russes that would have been influencing the Europeans, and the Europeans in turn influenced the Egyptians. In the States we have Ruth St Denis. In 1906 she started creating what has come to be known as modern. She did predate the Ballet Russes, but she didn't have the spectacular costume, she didn't have the touring. Her influence was much, much smaller and a more intellectual sort of group than Ballet Russes, which was actually, even though it was a ballet company, had quite a wide audience appeal. It wasn't until 1916 that with Ted Shawn she actually narrowed in on Egypt. So from 1916 she actually created a number of dances inspired by Egypt. And I do say inspired because, like the Ballet Russes and Mata Hari, she didn't do any research. Her dance came from her own imaginings, what she thought it would be like to be Cleopatra. Cleopatra was a very popular role in films, plays and private parties. Lots of people like to sort of dress up as Cleopatra. Maybe the most famous movie, however, was the 1917 movie of the same name, which starred Theda Bara as the very vampy Cleopatra. But interest in this tragic and powerful queen predated it by quite some time, and you'll see lots of images of women dressed up or either for parties or for plays as Cleopatra. And it's quite interesting to see how they thought she must have looked. There's a certain similarity you'll notice too among the images. So up until about 1922, the whole of the East was mined for inspiration. And then something happened. Carter released his discovery of King Tutankhamun's tomb, and the world went wild. The amount of treasure is unbelievable. And he was quite smart. He drip fed it over a number of years, so it wasn't like a big find and that was it. No, there was a little bit here and a little bit here, a little bit there. It just went mad. I mean, they even got a word for it, Egyptomania, and it was everywhere. You could get King Tut cocktails. There were songs and dances created with Egyptian themes. They used it to sell soap, eyeshadow, lipstick. Women's fashions started to take on a sort of a classical Egyptian line from the many of the tomb paintings, quite simple, quite straight. And they started using some of the colours that you'll see in the tomb paintings, the vermilion, the lapis lazuli. If you're ever in Cairo, do drop in to the Cairo Museum and actually see what is on show from King Tut's tomb. And this is only a very small part of it. Some of it is not on display at all and some of it is travelling. If you're lucky, you'll be able to see the death mask. 11 kilograms of solid gold. In 1925, the world saw a new art movement, Art Deco. So this was the first time it was displayed in Paris, and it grew out of the Art Nouveau movement, but that the lines were simplified, and it drew from the ancient world and the East. And the East in this case was what was then called the Near East, right through to the Far East. So the whole gamut. I don't think the term Middle East even existed just then, just Near East and Far East. There are many different styles of Art Deco, but here are some images which have a more Egyptian theme, and you can see the lines of the pyramids and lotuses. I hope that taste will get you off now onto an internet search, and there's some marvellous images on the net, so have a look for yourself, and you can spend hours looking at them. It's gorgeous. And if you're in New Zealand in April in 2018, why not come to Napier and check out the Med Ans Festival there.